welcome to Rose Squad Reviews. Today's review, Fullmetal Alchemist 2003, or Fullmetal Alchemist, the original. And as you may have noticed, I am wearing glasses. Shades. These are the nostalgia glasses. And like glasses indoors, completely useless for what we have today. So we must take off the nostalgia glasses and review this media objectively so that we can say whether or not it is actually good in essence or only good in nostalgia. Also note for this review, I'll be pretending that the manga and Brotherhood do not exist, so I am reviewing Fullmetal Alchemist as if it was a standalone series, only that series. So our show begins with two brothers named Ed and Al who are alchemists. In this kind of steampunk Europe-esque setting, alchemy is the magic of the land and they are rather skilled in this. After their mother dies, they try and use alchemy to bring her back to life, but it goes oh so horribly wrong, and Ed, the older brother, ends up losing his arm and leg, and Al, the younger brother, ends up losing his entire body with his soul tethered to a suit of armor. But to say that the show is solely about these two brothers on their adventures trying to regain their bodies is a sham. It's a lot more than that. Ed, the older brother, eventually joins the military to get information about how to gain their body back and so on, and various things happen in the military. Within the military, the two most important main characters are Roy Mustang. He is a colonel in the military. He was also the one who recruited Ed to the military, although they don't like each other. He is called the Flame Alchemist, which he has very awesome flames, like he snaps and just whoosh, flames everywhere, all the flames, very exciting. And then you have Hawkeye, who is like his sidekick. She is a second lieutenant, and she doesn't have any alchemy skills, but she is a very awesome person and a sniper, which pretty cool. The characters that tended to confuse me on this show were the characters called the homunculus. Now, homunculus is an alchemic term for dwarf in the flask, and I thought it had some tie-in for that and never really got any resolution on that. They are mystical beings that seem to have the inability to die. And they're named after the biblical 7 deadly sins. So naturally I assumed, oh, biblical 7 deadly sins, so naturally they must be that sin incarnate, right? Well, I was wrong, apparently. So for example, you have a character named Lust. Oh, she'll be Lust incarnate, but wasn't really. So I was kind of confused on where are you going with this, I'm not quite sure. I assumed, you have 7 deadly sins, there might be a satanic figure or a Christ-like figure, and none of those really made an appearance, though there was like bad guys behind it all. It just didn't seem to know where they were going for. I mean, you have your various archetypes of villains, you have the pitiful villain, the anti-hero, just the villain that is great to hate, the villain for lack of a better term. And didn't know where to go with homunculi. Just didn't seem to quite make sense with where the show ended up going. For the plot, this show is a shonen, but it is very emotionally driven. Rather than having it be driven by plot or logic, or comedy, or some combination thereof, it is driven by emotion. And now the two top shows that come to my mind when I think about shows driven by emotion are Fruits Basket, which is a comedy and romance. Very lots of emotions, tug on those heartstrings every episode. The other one was Anohana, the flower we saw that day, where it kind of has the everyday dealing with loss kind of vibe. And this kind of had elements of all of them. It had humor in it, and I, at least personally, thought it was rather hilarious, being as short as Ed is described in the manga. Yeah, I'm short. And it had a lot of elements of loss. I mean, in the first few episodes you learn that their mother did die and that this whole adventure got started with trying to resurrect her. But more than most shows that I have seen, this show deals with loss. you know where those heartstrings are. There's so many heartbreaking moments. And moments that make you just want to curl into a ball and cry for a week. You're just like, why? Now, this show has several of what I would consider fillers, although officially there are no fillers. It's just kind of that thing where a bad guy appears at the beginning, taken out by the end, nothing ever really comes with it, but they're as entertaining as I will get out. I personally enjoy the fillers in the show more than the actual content due to the fact that your heartstrings were like crushed every single episode, and I can only take so much of that. But fillers were good, but they're there if you don't like that kind of thing. So the ending of Fullmetal Alchemist actually takes place in a movie called The Conqueror Shambhala. And this ending, it was epic. I'll give it that. It was quite dramatic. But it just doesn't have that finality that I was looking for. That final, yes, this is how it's supposed to end. This is everything it's been building up towards. It really didn't have that at all. It's very bittersweet. I mean, there are a lot of moments that you've been waiting this entire show to happen. When it finally happens, you're like, yes. Everything that I've been waiting for has finally come to pass. But there were a lot of things that, at least I wanted to happen, and never happened, and it just kind of had that bittersweet, a little bit more bitter than sweet ending to it. As for the sound in the show, sound is one thing that Fullmetal Alchemist does correctly. It has a beautiful and haunting soundtrack that I will listen to the entirety of the soundtrack. It is that good. The songs tend to have that authentic Western feel, for lack of a better term. That yes, this is done by an orchestra. One of the main songs that I want to bring up is called Brothers. It has lyrics in Japanese and Russian, and there's also an English version sung by the English voice actor for Ed that's out there on the interwebs. The music fit perfectly. There's not a single thing that I can vouch for the music. The openings were good. Most people think that as the show went on, the openings and opening animation got better, and I tend to agree. But again, that's a matter of personal taste. For the voice acting in the show, it is notable all around the board. For the Japanese, if you can understand at least basic Japanese, I'd actually recommend listening to at least part of the show in the sub. For one, you have Ed, who's just this incredibly rude punk kid, upstart, whatever you want to label him, who is just all over the board, no honorifics, no Keigo, none of you ain't getting any of that. But the problem I have with the sub is it doesn't feel Western, which is set in a Western setting. But then the biggest issue is they can't decide if they're going to use Japanese terminology or English terminology. For example, you're introduced to this character named Dr. Marco, and that's how it's said in the sub. But then later on, in that very same scene, he's called Mariko Sensei. So they can't decide, are we going to use Sensei, the Japanese word, or are we going to use Doctor, the English word? And this was just one of many circumstances where they're just do we use the more Western term? Do we not use the Western term? Do we call them by their first or their given name like you do in English? Or do it by their last name like you do in Japanese? It just kind of has that awkward clashing of Eastern and Western culture when it comes to speaking. But if you don't know Japanese or you like English dubs, which you should, the dub is one of the best. Funimation pulled out all the stops per usual for this dub. And one thing to note that is superior to many other dubs is that they actually had a young boy voice Al, the younger brother, instead of a girl. And I, for one, greatly appreciated this. Now, there's no way to translate Ed's rudeness into English without upping the rating. It just doesn't quite work. But you do get that rude, sassy vibe from the voice actor who portrays Ed. And I mean, all of the other characters were voiced near perfect, in my opinion. I didn't have any voice that I had any issue with, any super annoying voice. It was done well, it was synced well. It is one of Funimation's best. And that takes us to the point in the review where we talk about the animation. And this was one of my biggest issues with Fullmetal Alchemist. And I understand that at the beginning it was a rather low budget show. Your characters in the background don't get details, and the artwork is inconsistent. Sometimes it's very high quality, other times it's low quality. And it does get better as the show goes on, and by the end, it is superb. But you do have that at the beginning where it's just mediocre at best. And I don't want to count them off for that or say it's any less of a show to watch because of that. Because really, considering the budget that they had and the time frame and all of that, it is phenomenal. And it still stands up better, at least in the animation style, than some of the stuff coming out today. Another thing I want to talk about is the hand-to-hand combat in this show. It is phenomenal. As someone who is actually at its height according to the manga, and has done martial arts, that is how you fight if you are short. I mean, the hand-to-hand combat is accurate, it's amazing, you're throwing the alchemy in there. It is a spectacle to watch. If nothing else in this show, watch at least one of the fights, because they are so beautifully animated. So, things to watch out for in this show. As you may have guessed, this show gets rather dark. It deals with loss, death, all of that. It gets very morally dark, morally ambiguous, a little bit of gray in there. I mean, it makes the sequel, Brotherhood, look like a walk in the park, which it's not. The only other thing was language. I didn't think it was overly vulgar or offensive or anything like that, but there is some if you're just like, I can't deal with that. In conclusion, I give Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 a rating of 4 out of 5 stars. It is a classic. You need to see it if you haven't already. I mean, it is just a staple of anime. It almost goes without saying that, oh, you watch anime, you've seen Fullmetal Alchemist. It is one of those shows that is too important to pass up. Even though I personally didn't like the plot as much just because it was so emotionally driven, there's still quality. It's still good. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. In conclusion, I don't know what I'm going to say.